So, greetings and welcome everyone to a very special Parent Academy. Today, we're going to take a look at supporting children in becoming masters of mathematics at home, but we're doing this from quite a different angle than our previous seminar. In this webinar, we're going to discuss ways that families can weave maths principles into a child's everyday life. So in this way, children will develop a strong sense of confidence and familiarity with things like numbers and equations. But much more than this, they'll also become motivated by seeing real-life practical applications of the maths that we teach them at school and that you support at home with your homework as well. So over time, mathematics will be an area that feels just as natural to a child as does speaking their home native language. So to introduce this, I would like to point out the incredible opportunity that exists from school and home working together in a sphere like maths. At school, for example, we can teach the children how to tell the time, how to add two numbers together, what fractions are, and things of that nature. And we can do a lot of this work in children's book and with some practical activities that simulate real life. But at home, you really have unique opportunities to apply this maths in a practical way, very often and consistently, that just can't be replicated in the classroom. As you will see, by combining then our powers and strengths, we can end up with children who feel very familiar with maths and become confident and masters of mathematics in a very, very complete sense. So without any further introduction, I will pass you now to our resident maths coordinator, Ms. Tian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Noah. So dear parents, we are going to introduce the three main areas that you can help at home, and you will see immediate effect whenever you start doing any of the things we introduced today. The first area we're going to talk about is time. So time exists everywhere, but in school, we often feel like children find time, reading time, recognizing time, pretty challenging. So one thing you can do at home is, first of all, to set it up. We all have clocks at home, but what we really need for children is a clock at the child's level. Have a think, is it possible to have a clock on the bedside table? I'm sure you all have time when you're trying to point at the clock to children and say, oh, this is 8:30, but you can't reach and you're just vaguely pointing that way. If you have a clock at the level, you can then point at the numbers and the hands very easily. So start to have a clock at the eye level, and then expose them to different types of time. There is the traditional analog time, which is this one with the hands. And also we have digital time, which they see very often on phones, on iPads, on laptops. Have both of these kind of clocks at home to make them understand or both tell time. And when you do get a clock, have a look. We would prefer to have a clock that has got 12 numbers and both hands very clearly. And if you can get clocks that's got all of these tiny little lines that indicate minutes, that would be fantastic. Even more so, if you can get clock that's got a second hand that goes 1 second, 2 seconds, that will be brilliant. Imagine if your child is waiting very anxiously for something, you go, you're going to wait for 1 more minute. Look, have this clock, and when this hand goes for 1 round, that's a minute. Think about how practical and how direct it is for your children. And also, you can have little kind of timers, such as cute sand timers, or that kind of timers you have in the kitchen, or even the alarm on your washing machine or in your oven. Children love to fiddle with those, and if they know, oh, this is about 50 minutes, and when the oven goes ding, they'll be very excited, and that really helps them to build up the understanding of time. Moving on, when you have a setting of clocks around home, you can start to use ambitious language. I'm sure that you have got children ask you, when can we go out? Or when we're going to have dinner? Or when can I watch a film? Instead of saying yes or later or soon, you can start saying, look, when the long hand points at 6, we will have dinner. Or if your children are older and have learned the language of 1/2 and 1/4 past, 1/4 to, you can start to say, when it is 4:15, we will do so and so. If you start to use this kind of language consistently, children will start to understand they have to learn to read the clock in order for them to do the fun things they want to do. Even more so, you can create a daily schedule with them, such as at what time we get up. And when they get up, refer to it, say, oh, Now we are all eating breakfast. It is, oh, 7:30. Now we get in the car. It is 7:45. The more you refer to the time in your daily life, the more the children will be exposed to it. You're not necessarily teaching them technically, but when they come to school and we teach them all the technical part, they will be like, oh, I've heard it at home. It is very familiar with us. So set it up and use the language as much as you can. And also, you have a lot of links to real life. Say, for example, so many of our families are international families. You must have, say, the children's grandparents at home in another country. It's a great time to introduce concepts such as time differences. It's also great when you travel outside of Russia or even within Russia, and for children to understand different places, different times, and for them to add a few hours or take away a few hours and to see how it works in real life. And also, say when you're having a lovely walk in the forest or when you're driving somewhere, children get bored. But what you can do is go, oh, look, let's play a game. I want you to think in your head and let me know when it is 1 minute. It is a great way for them to start to estimate and get the feel of how long 1 minute is. Show them what the speed you are driving and say, so in 1 minute, this is how far we can drive. How far do you think we can drive in 5 minutes, in 20 minutes? And actually check because you're actually driving. So use all of these opportunities for them to understand, time is everywhere. And the more so you do this, the more children will be familiar with it and they'll be more excited when they encounter it in school. So this is the first part about time. Moving on, the second part I think that you will really, really enjoy is measurement and statistics. I definitely enjoy it with my 3-year-old, so I think that you'll really love this one. First of all, it's for measurement. Once again, there are ways to set up for success. So you can almost do like a mental audit in your head. Think, what things do I have at home that I can use to measure? We're talking about measuring length. We're talking about measuring capacity, which is like liquid. And we're talking about measuring mass, which is how heavy something is. And over here, there's just some very brief examples of rulers, different types of rulers, tape measures, and things you measure furniture with. Collect them and give it to the children, almost like a play area. You can just lay it in the corner or on the table and say, go, explore. You'll be amazed what they would love to measure. Children would love to measure all sorts of things. Say, for example, how tall mummy and daddies are, how tall they are, and how far apart is this bed to the window. Let them be creative. And with this, you can also try it with different cylinders and containers at home. Another thing you can try is with statistics, which is data. The Winter Olympics is on at the moment. So what you can do is you can have a very interesting homemade board. All you need is some countries' names or flags that you and your children are from, maybe Russia, maybe the countries you're interested in. And when you're watching it, you can tally it, you can put stickers on it, or you can make a bar chart with it. But this makes watching Winter Olympics with a purpose. And children can see very directly how data is recorded and presented. Moving on, one thing children will really love with measurement is actually get hands-on. So one thing you can definitely do is to make something such as bake a cake. So obviously in school, we try to make it as practical as we can, but there are only so many times that we can get all the waters and things out. But at home, it is very easy for you to just bake a cake. And it's a great opportunity to learn language as well. You can find a recipe from your home language and translate it into English. There's just one thing. When you look for recipes that's got milliliters and liters and grams rather than cups and things. But if you do find the American cups version, maybe it's a great way of learning how to convert. So bake a cake with them and actually let them pour the flour in and estimate how heavy it is. Use different types. Use the kitchen scales, use all the measuring jugs, use all the little measuring spoons to have a very direct idea of how much is 5 milliliters, how much is 500 milliliters. Trust me, they will love that because my daughter's loving it at the moment. And that's how she learns to read numbers and how she starts to be familiar with looking at all of the numbers. And this helps greatly with place values and counting when we're in school. Next thing that you can do is go into the real life and let them really see how measurement and statistics is in real life. So I'm sure you all have the experience of buying groceries, either going to the shop or have it delivered at home. So when you go to the shops, obviously we have seen these scales around, and you can bag a bag of apples and then put it on, and let your children have a go. And before you actually let them put it on, let them estimate, see, oh, how many apples will actually make 500 grams? Let's have a go, and then put it on the scale to see whether it works. And this is a great way for them to have a very clear idea of how heavy actually an apple is, because these kind of questions is what we encounter in school as well. And then if your children are a bit older, give them a calculator, show them the price of the apple, and then let them calculate the price of the apple. And when you're baking cakes or making pancakes, give them a challenge. You can try halving or doubling the recipe. Say the recipe you have found of the Victoria sponge cake is for 2 people. Ask them, now our grandparents are going to come, so we need a recipe for 6 people. How would you do that? And then let them measure it or halve it. And these are great opportunities for them to feel like, yeah, I learned math in school and I'm really helping mummy and daddy at home. They'll feel really proud of themselves. And also with the Winter Olympics example we have had, turn it into different charts. Maybe let them have a go on your Excel spreadsheet and show them the data they have tallied can really be turned into bar charts or line graphs and all of these fancy looking things, but actually they all come from watching the TV and recording things. So all of these you can do even if today or this weekend, and your children will be exposed to all of these exciting concepts. And when they come to school, they have been familiar with it and they will be more engaged in it. So next part we're going to talk about is money. And I'm going to hand it back to Mr. Noah.
Thanks very much, Miss Tian, and thank you, everyone. You know, I was so excited about this parent webinar. I absolutely had to wedge myself in there. So I hope you don't mind, though, before I just start talking about money, even just sharing a few anecdotes from home that follow these principles. I mean, I mentioned in my previous webinar about STEAM, how my son is really into elevators and lifts. I would never have guessed. But what we did is we just put up on the wall buttons where he can practice pressing the floors of the lift, and he loves it. And it's helped familiarize him with numbers, you know, really tremendously. He's still very young, only just turned 4 years old. And already he's very familiar with numbers just from seeing them in his play around the house. Of course, being a young boy, sometimes he gets a bit mischievous and needs to sit down and calm down for about a minute. And we used to just say, oh, yeah, that's about a minute. That's about 2 minutes. Instead, what I've just started is taking the clock right off the wall and handing it to him and saying, OK, when this hand here goes all the way around, you're free. You can, you know, go back and play. Just relax for now. Or you can bet he counts all those numbers now 1 through 12. You know, and it's him. I'm not telling him to do that. He will count them out as it goes around, very motivated to do it. So, you know, that's a few ideas there. And even since actually he was a baby, and with my young daughter now, they love to have me like jump them up and down on the sofa. And so I just decided to count out as I do it, 1, 2, 3, and they jump, and even do it in patterns like 1, 2 with a high jump. And so even just from that, things when they come to multiples of 3 or 4 or even and odd numbers, I'm hoping, my theory is anyway, that they'll just have that sense of familiarity. It will just feel familiar to them to count in those multiples when they get a bit older. And you know what, you probably have a lot more ideas than I might, and I'd love you to share them with me if you do, because I'll try them out as a parent and share them with our other parents in our community later on. But once you develop that eye for finding ways to just put numbers and mathematics into your everyday life and make them accessible to your children by as simply as, yeah, taking the clock off the wall, as Miss Tian has mentioned, you know, it opens up a world of opportunities. Now, I did ask for special permission to talk about one of my favorite topics today, and that is money. So I suppose I'd better make a start. Let's get on. So I was excited to talk about this topic because I think it's such an important one for children from a number of perspectives. I mean, historically, children are often taught quite a number of skills to help them go out into the world and actually get a job and gain employment. But they tend to spend less time learning about how to handle the money that comes with that employment. And this is a process that can start from a younger age than we at first might think as parents. So to start things off, I want you to imagine the best possible school lesson you could think of or that you experienced involving money, you know, dealing with money. I actually have a photo right there, one of my favorite photos of recent times from a terrific lesson involving money. This was from last year in Miss Spencer's class, and you can just see on the children's faces how excited they are to be counting those plastic coins. Those two boys were bankers, actually, counting out money and handing it to people so they could go out to these, make-believe shops, simulated shops where they could buy things like toys or, plastic fruits from other people in the class. And after this, of course, they got into their books and they started practicing calculations. If you have £5 and you spend £1.65, how much change would you have left over? Addition, subtraction, things of that nature. And to be honest with you, this is great. Children are fascinated by money. It's a wonderful tool. If you're talking about things like rubles, I mean, it's great for, learning about multiples of 50, 100, 500, 1,000. Children will just naturally count it out. When we do charity work, I ask the children to help me count the money, and they absolutely love it. If you're talking about euros, dollars, and pence, I mean, what a great way to show children the real meaning of things like decimal places. When you talk about £5.50, for example, you can talk to the children very easily about how that's £5.50. It comes naturally into the language and into their calculations. But the best lesson that we could ever create at school doesn't even come close to the sort of engagement that you could support at home. If you could imagine these boys, for example, how excited they are now, and how much more excited and motivated they would be if they were counting their own money, if they were working towards real savings goals, preparing to go out into the shops, spending their own money on a toy that they themselves saved up for. Imagine how much more motivated they would be then. So I recommend, actually, once you feel that your children are old enough, setting up a weekly allowance. And, you can decide a figure, 400 rubles, 1,000 rubles. It's really up to you. But the idea is to give your children as much autonomy as you're comfortable with, or even as possible, about how they use it. So the next time you're in a toy shop, for example, if a child is, nagging you saying, oh, please, I'd really like that toy, that, car kit or something for 2,600 rubles, you can easily say, sure, yeah, you can absolutely have that. You can buy it yourself using your own money. And, there is a certain sense of, joy that a child gets when their parent buys them a gift. And I'm sure, there's no reason to stop that as a parent, but how much more, sense of confidence and dignity will they have when they're making their own shopping decisions, where they can absolutely have that toy, provided, that the toy is okay with you, and provided that they have the money to earn it. If that child has a 2,600 toy that they would like, and you're paying them 400 rubles a week, I mean, the first thing they're going to do is start counting their money. I really recommend you go to an ATM and actually give them their allowance in cash so they can physically see it, start counting it out, store it. They'll probably count it several times a week. And what else will they do? Of course, they would start estimating how long before they reach their goal. So if they're trying to reach 2,600 and after 2 weeks they've reached 800, they could probably start to figure out, okay, maybe it's going to be 4 or 5 weeks and I'll be thereabouts. So they're practicing that estimation. They're in that estimation. They might not even realize it, but they're almost starting to do some multiplication in their minds to help them get there. So, if they want to buy some sweets along the way with their money, well, it's up to you as parents about how you feel about that. But, I'd say, sure, it's your money, but it's going to set you back a little bit on your goal of getting your toy robot. And, lessons like that about setbacks or about savings, dissipating a little bit, sometimes they're best learned by experience. Better they learn that now at a young age when we're talking about sweets and robots than later on when they're learning that the hard way about a mortgage on a house or things like that. Then they start to practice those success skills very naturally about things like self-discipline and responsibility. Now, I thought I should mention, I have listened to a well-known Russian psychologist talk about allowances, and there is a perspective where you shouldn't really link that money that you give them to work around the house, but you should just have a set figure. You can negotiate it with them or decide as parents, and that they just get that each week regardless of jobs around the house. And the reason for that is that they said children should always contribute with jobs around the house. As part of being a member of, let's say, a tribe, like a family, they should be contributing. There is a certain sense of self-confidence and dignity that they develop through that. And the allowance should be a separate thing. But, it's a decision that you can have as parents. If they would like more allowance, you might wish to link it to tasks that go above and beyond, or you might want to keep it as a set figure so they just have to learn to be patient and work towards their goals. But either way, There are many success skills, many different variables here that you can think about as a family, and many benefits, of course, that arise from all of this. And there are other possibilities too. One more anecdote. I mean, when my family go to a dacha, we have these wonderful little corner shops. They know our family well. They know my son well. And I was a bit brave. I gave my 3.5-year-old son my card. My wife was a bit worried that he might break it. But it's funny, sometimes when you give children responsibility, they really respond and they learn to be careful. And, I showed him how he could buy things and pay for things that we were buying. And before too long, he booted me out of the shop. He wouldn't even let me go into the shop with him. Every time we'd go for a walk and we walk past the shop, he would demand to go in and buy something. So, I would say things like, okay, could you buy us 2 bottles of water? Or can you get us 6 bananas? Which, for a 3-year-old, that's some good math there, counting those things out. And he'd go in, also learning his communication skills, ask for them, pay for them. To be truthful with you, I often didn't need that water or the half loaf of bread or the bananas, didn't need them at all. But I thought it was wonderful that he was developing his confidence and just counting those things out, checking he'd been given the right amount. And then he'd come out to me and proudly show me what he'd come out with. And, it was great from many angles there. So looking at the opportunities here, take your child shopping, show them the adult world, measure the weight of the fruit in the shops, as Miss Tiana suggested earlier. Give them maybe a budget of things like for the breakfast cereal that they can go and look for. Teach them to look for discounts or make decisions if an expensive product is worth it. And as we've mentioned all along here, then the maths really starts to feel very familiar for them. And, they get good at maths, but they might not even realize that that's what they're doing. But they will become, back to lessons, more and more motivated than ever before when they can understand that this subtraction, multiplication, and decimals really does have those real world applications. If you start young, they'll be ready to learn about things at a slightly older age, like investment, converting currencies, starting an enterprise, and just generally taking responsibility. And here's the thing to think about that. I mean, these children, many of them will study in universities around the world. And if not, then sooner or later, they'll move out and be on their own, and they'll be independent. They'll be by themselves when they might make a decision about whether or not to get a mortgage, whether a bank is offering a good loan. I mean, it's one thing to teach a child, yes, 2 + 2 = 4, and to become skilled at things like maths and adding like that. It's a different thing entirely to be able to apply those skills and think about whether $4 is good value for a toy, or 4 weeks is a long time to save up, or if 4% is a good rate on a loan or a good return on an investment. There's a meaning behind all the numbers in maths, and you're in a great position to pull back the curtain and show it to them. So if you want your child to grow up and go abroad and be skilled with maths, and also to be independent and make great decisions with money or anything else at the age when they should do that, then I think it really behooves us all to consider how we can start training with them in a very fun and age-appropriate way, starting from right now. Whatever age they might be, there's always ways, whether it's bouncing them on the sofa and counting in patterns, or, allowing them a bit of autonomy when they go shopping or with an allowance, weighing things and doing recipes around the house, or, telling the time and helping with a family schedule, or even tracking medals at the Olympics. There's so many ways to do this, and there's a lot of family joy to be had in it too. So we hope you found some interesting things in this presentation and really a worthwhile message. Thank you for joining us. If you like right now, you're very welcome to post any comments you like with any questions you might have. We'd be happy to answer back to you. Otherwise, we thank you very much for joining with us today. May I say that on behalf of Ms. Tian, Mr. Smith, and myself, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much for joining us. It was a world record of 57 parents. That's nearly a quarter of Lower Campus joined us this morning. So thank you very, very much for your attendance and continued support. We will
Thank
have
you
this
very much. I must say, we do really appreciate having you here as well. It's so nice to connect as a community in this way.
Thank you very much. Oh, I think we did have a question there. Thank you. Times tables. Any great tips for times tables? Now, I think something we do in school is to sort of set up the times tables in order. So there is quite a clear order in which the times tables should be taught. and then lots of rewards for passing a times tables. With times tables, it's not good to sit and practice for 3-4 hours. There's a sort of, you can overkill on times tables. So I would advise very short, sharp, snappy sessions. I learned my times tables in the car on the way to school, parroting them to my mum. So the use of times table rock stars is great, but it's more so the regular practice. A bit like when you go to the gym and want to build up muscle, it's not lifting the weight for the longest time, it's those repetitions. So lots of positive praise and lots of repetitions of the times tables as well.
In terms of real world applications as well, there are things like we just spoke about money, like, you know, rubles are great ones for counting in multiples of 50, 100. You can give them a pile of coins and ask them to count your money. I mean, the children here really do love doing those sorts of things when we have charity. We can't do that every day. But, you know, if you ask them to count the money in your wallet, or you withdraw some coins or have some money around, they can start to do that very well. I should mention as well, just at this point, while we're waiting for additional questions, I'll pass to you in a minute, Miss Tian, as well. But just don't forget, we're down to our final day on the parent survey. We do love hearing the parent voice, not only now, but also in our parent survey. The link is on Seesaw, so please do feel very welcome to go and check that out. And yeah, join us and make your voice heard in that parent survey. Thank you very much. Sorry, Miss Tian, I believe you had something to say as well.
Yeah, just adding on to what Mr. Smith said, there's order for times table. So start with a 2 times table and 10 times table, and then moving on to the 4s and the 5s. You can speak to your class teacher, because it depends on which year group your child is in at the moment, and they will give you very clear recommendations on what set of times table they should be practicing. And also practice the division as well. So if children know, say, the 3 times table as 1, 3 is 3, 2, 3 is 6. Ask them questions like 9 divided by 3, or how many groups of 3 go into it. Only when they have mastered that would we consider they've mastered that times table. So go both ways, multiplication and division.
Fabulous advice. As the webinar was going on there, I had some other great ideas actually. Monopoly is a fantastic way as well to gamify money at home. I think I used to cheat when my parents went to the toilet and steal lots of money, and for sure I knew exactly how much money was in my wallet there. And lots of our children love sports as well. So, you know, looking at the data and statistics tables of the sports and finding out how many goals Man United have scored and how many points, they love that type of thing. And the tape measure one, Miss Tiana, is a great idea. Even now, when I get my tape measure out of my apartment, I think that's the most adult I ever feel, is measuring things in my apartment with the tape measure. So I think we're running out of questions there. I think that's about it. So we can end our Parent Academy there.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you for your kind comments too. I am browsing through, reading your thanks. Very pleasant to join with you, and thanks just for your kind comments there. Very much appreciated.